do right here is go back. Way back. Back into time.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.
Celebrating 20 years of New England Championship Wrestling. This is the Regeneration Podcast.
And now, here are your hosts, Sheldon Goldberg, Joe Matarazzo, and Kevin Castro.
Welcome, everyone, to another thrill-packed edition of the NECW ReGeneration Podcast, celebrating 20 years of New England Championship Wrestling. I'm Sheldon Goldberg, joined as always by Joe Matarazzo.
What's going on, guys?
Kevin Castro.
Hey, guys. Hey.
And this week, we have a very exciting special guest, bringing a feminine perspective to the NECW ReGeneration Podcast. None other than the Suplex Sweetheart herself, Isana. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's so good to have you with us. I've been looking forward to this. We were going to talk women's wrestling this week, NECW's version of it and other people's versions of it. And it occurred to me that what the show could use was a female perspective. And you were the first person I thought of because not only are you a woman wrestler, but you're well-spoken. And we've had a couple of brief conversations about women's wrestling in the past, and I always thought you had something really great to offer in terms of perspective. So it's good to have you with us.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to be able to offer my perspective and, maybe temper some things and maybe offer some ideas that, you guys just never were in a position to think about.
Let's get to know you a little bit for those of you who are not familiar with you, the unenlightened, the uninformed, and the people who have never seen you before. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about when you started wrestling, who trained you, etc.
So I have been wrestling for 5 years now. Well, if you count the COVID year as a year. I literally was out for a year because of COVID. Other than that, I've been wrestling for 5 years. I started in 2016, and I was originally trained by JT Dunn, and then after that, I went over to train with Matt Taven and Mike Bennett. So I started training in 2013. It was either 2013 or 2014. It kind of blends together at this point. Several hits to the head later. I can't quite remember when I started.
It happens.
I struggle to remember how old I was at the time. Yeah, so I started training. It took me 2.5 years to finally debut because I managed to tear my ACL right out the gate and had to have ACL surgery. So, because, go big or go home.
That's so good.
So it took me a little while to actually get in the ring, but I've been doing it for a while. I am the Suplex Sweetheart. I am known for throwing people, picking that as I like to lovingly refer to it. I pick people up and I put them down firmly.
There you go.
I'm not your typical eye candy wrestler. I am, curvy, but I'm more designed to mess things up in the ring, and no, not in a bad way, but in a good way. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes in a bad way, I'll admit it.
Okay.
No one's perfect.
That can be an endearing quality.
Sometimes there's been some oopsies that came out and actually worked out better and in my favor, and I was like, oh, well, I didn't know I could do that. So that's always fun. So I learned how to do power slams. I was trying to do an exploder suplex, and I turned it into a power slam instead. Not sure how I did it, but I did it. It's been a fun ride, and I've been working with you guys for about 4 years, and can't wait to get back in that ring and wrestle for you guys again.
We can't wait to have shows so that you can wrestle on them again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Darn this COVID stuff. But we will be back, I can promise you that, at some point when we can have full crowds and when we can pull everything together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it will happen. In the meantime, we're doing stuff like this. We have been releasing lots of old footage that hasn't been seen in many years, and we've been doing this podcast to talk about, because otherwise, in a normal time, we would have done something big for our 20th anniversary. That we couldn't do that, we decided to do this instead. So that's how we got to where we are right now. And one of the things that we've been talking about, amongst the many topics that we've been talking about, is our history with women's wrestling. We embraced women's wrestling more than any other New England company at a time when women's wrestling in New England, at least on the independent level, was pretty much an afterthought.
Yeah.
We were the first independent company around to do all women's shows. We did those back in 2004, 2005, and we've been doing them off and on ever since. We've made a pretty big commitment to women's wrestling, and it's been interesting to see other companies and the national companies sort of jump on board and follow suit. WWE and their women's revolution, which really isn't a revolution because other people revolutionized it far before WWE did. But,
way before.
Yeah. But it's interesting, and 2 weeks ago, by the time this is released, or escapes, depending on how you want to put it, there was a match on AEW between Thunder Rosa and Dr. Britt Baker, which was a lights out, no holds barred, anything goes match, and I'm wondering if all of you had seen it.
Oh yeah.
Kevin, did you see that match?
Oh yeah, yes I did.
Yeah, I got to see about half of it, the latter half of it. I missed the first half of it, unfortunately, but I did. Basically, around the time that Britt started bleeding is when I started watching, so I get to see all the good stuff.
There you go.
Depending on your definition of good, anyway.
So it's been interesting to see the reaction to it. A lot of people are praising it as match of the year, the most important women's match in decades, and blah, 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 and all that. I had a kind of mixed reaction to it. I really appreciated the work of the women in the match. How can you not, given all the stuff that they did? The question is, if I were the one in charge, would I have booked them to do those kinds of things? And in my opinion, I think it went just, even though the match over-delivered, I think in terms of audience expectation, I don't think the audience expected there to be thumbtacks and the degree of plunder that there was in the match. But was it necessary? If you were asked to do that, would you balk at it? Would you say, okay, what the heck? Or what were your thoughts on, from the point of view of a potential participant, what would you...
It's one of those things where it's kind of 50-50 with me. On one hand, as I've said, I'm not necessarily afraid to bleed. A little blood never hurt anyone. On the other hand, thumbtacks are something that I really do not want to try. I'm not a fan of picking things out of my skin after a match. I don't think I would have taken it quite to the level that they did. It really depends on their level of comfort with it, and on a personal level. Right. If that's something that if someone was to come up to me and say, "Hey, I want you to bump on thumbtacks, and I want you to bleed everywhere, and I want you to go through 3 tables, and not that they went through 3 tables, but and I want you to fall through a ladder or fall off a ladder and this, that, and the other thing," I would probably say, no way in hell. Meanwhile, if I was telling a story and I was realizing that progressing to this point where I have to, and I've had this happen where I was telling a story with Amanda Fox, and we were at the point where we had to basically get to a tables, ladders, and chairs match because there was really no other way of outdoing everything that we'd already done. And I was comfortable with that because I knew that Amanda Fox wasn't going to kill me. I knew I wasn't going to kill Amanda Fox. It got to that point where I got to choose the level of comfort that I had with a hardcore match. And I think if those 2 women had decided of themselves that was the level of comfort that they had, then go out and do it. But if it was something where they were kind of put on the spot and had to do it because that's what people wanted, then that kind of changes it a bit. I guess it comes down to a matter of consent. Right.
Yeah.
So, Joe, what did you think when you saw this?
I was extremely impressed. The work rate that these 2 put in on this definitely, like you said, blew away the expectations of everything. Thunder Rosa is our workhorse. for her to put on that kind of a I mean, I've heard her in interviews, and she is so passionate about what she's doing, and how she had nothing and really wasn't given much of a chance. So she had a lot to prove. Britt Baker just had to hang on for the ride, and some of the stuff that she did, my hat's off to her. I mean, that was unbelievable. And from what I understand, the majority of the use of the tools were completely picked by them. They're the ones that asked to use them. They wanted to do it. Sometimes less is more, but let's put it this way: when we were trying to listen for the kaboom from the exploding, we found it. It just happened a week later.
Right. Right.
You know, I'm sorry, that was a pay-per-view match.
Absolutely.
The amount of intensity that they had. What I liked about it was I'll give you a perfect example. When Thunder Rosa was outside and she got the curb stomp on the stairs, and she went down, registering, selling, and came up bleeding. That's the move was used, and it was done the right way, and there was nothing. Everything about it made sense. All the dots were connected in that case. Same thing when Britt ended up getting. I mean, just everything they did. There was no wasted movements. The power bomb into the tax was just. I mean, you want to talk about ballsy? I mean, that just took balls. And then to keep going, and then even the way that when they kicked out of it, because it hurt. They made it make sense. Yeah, I was absolutely thrilled with that match. You know, those two women Britt Baker is the face of AEW, and what I don't like is what's happened afterwards, because that girl should have become not an instant baby face, but that girl right there, because of the level of respect that the fans would have for her for what happened, the turn it felt too forced with the her heel promo that she just did. You know, and there was a classic example of somebody went over and somebody got over. Right. You know, Thunder Rosa went over, and that was great for the NWA, great for what they had coming up. And Britt Baker, she's over as a badass. Right. That's it. She's just over. Yep. It was fantastic.
Kevin, what were your thoughts about this?
What I thoroughly enjoyed about the match, again, the heart of both women. I do think that was a historic match for women's wrestling, but I also think it was a historic match for wrestling in general. I think we're getting to the point now where it's almost unfair to put the label on it of, oh, that was a great women's match. No, that was a great match. You know, it's almost like
preach.
You know, they put the word women's on it as if it wasn't supposed to be as good, or they weren't supposed to work as hard. That's just my standalone part of it. As far as what they used in the match, just from putting together matches like that for other people, I have never asked anyone to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. I would not bring up thumbtacks in a match. But if either one of if both competitors that are going to be in that match say, hey, can we get thumbtacks? I'll get them thumbtacks. You know, a few years ago we had, it was Davey N against Mistress Belmont in a last woman standing match, I believe. Where was that? Was that at the Americal?
Yeah.
Now, I knew that both women were going to go all out for it. But I wasn't going to be the one to say, hey, you should go through a table. But when they said to me, can we get a table, you better believe I was out and I got them a table for the match.
Right.
So, like Isana was saying, I don't know if the bookers were the ones that said, hey, we want ladders, we want thumbtacks, we want this. I would be willing to bet that it was them that said, this is what I want to do, are you comfortable with it? And when they both agreed to it, they just went all out. On a side note, what I find very fascinating about it is the person that went over is not signed to the company.
Right.
That speaks volume on them, too.
Although I think that might be just a matter of time.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Oh, yeah.
But to have that level of trust and respect...
Very true. Very true.
But not also that brings us back to the way that everybody's working together, the way that AEW is working with all these other companies, and to put the NWA over like that in a main event, over one of your top women. This is why it will work. Because the egos are being put aside and they're doing good for business. Because now the NWA just had their pay-per-view and they've been able to use this as a way when Camille went over on Rosa, saying that she still hadn't recovered from that incredible match she just had with Britt Baker. And it elevates everybody. So now Camille's the next step up. Right. So this is good. This is how it's supposed to work. And taking the egos out of it. This is fantastic. And you're absolutely right. As far as it being a women's match or a wrestling match, because it's a wrestling match, and at the end of this, it's the fact that no two women have ever been allowed to do what they just did. Right. And they went out there and they laid it all on the line. And I'm going to tell you what, they put the boys on notice. You boys have been doing this a long time. We just showed you in a matter of 20 minutes what we can do. And I think it was phenomenal.
The other thing to look at it too is they did it the right way. That was the blow off.
Yes.
They built up to it.
6 months.
One of the other shows, that would have been the first time they faced each other.
Right.
Yeah.
It made sense to the story. It made sense to the development that they've gone through.
But they could have booked that a lot better than they did. They could have gotten more months out of it. They could have had other matches and then just built up to this anything goes. This is a show. The problem with AEW is the booking. Everything is quick, fast, in a hurry. The show has more turns than the Jamaica Way. Every time you turn that show on, you see somebody's turning and there's a big angle. It's almost every segment. Back in the old days when I was watching wrestling, you had maybe 1 or 2 big angles a year on TV. You didn't have them in every segment. It's overkill.
One of the things with that, though, this is still the company's still in its infancy.
Right.
This isn't something that's been around for 20, 30, 40 years that has the system quote unquote down. It's not falling into its own traps either. They're still trying to develop. They're still trying to find their way. They're trying to make sure that every character fits where they're supposed to fit. To disagree with one of the things that you said about dragging it out, I think it would have been a waste to do a tables match, because in almost every match now someone goes through a table, regardless of if it's supposed to be involved in the match at all. And ladder matches, as exciting as they may be, I'm tired of them because
they're cliche.
Every other day.
Yeah.
They've been prostituted, if I can use that word without upsetting anybody. But the moves and the things have been prostituted. Everybody's doing it every day.
Yeah.
It's like we talk about a super kick. A super kick is just a sidekick at this point. They're not super. There's nothing super about them.
Right.
A clock.
Savate kick. But I also think that there was a reason for them to have the match the way they did it, with NWA coming in. I mean, Billy Corgan has known what he wanted to do with the NWA for a while. They only just announced what was going to happen. So I think he needed Thunder Rosa to help him push that pay-per-view, and I think they needed to work together to do that. Again, I think it's all systematic, the way everything's been laid out. If we talk about AEW has the biggest core of, I don't want to call them green, but less experienced talent than some of the other places that are out there. And I think they're trying to find them without having there are no house shows to test any of this stuff out with, to test out how the people are going to take them and all. So they're kind of going by the fly, and things have been changing, as fast as, like you said, as the weeks are going by. With that being said, when you sit over and you look at WWE, any of their shows, with the exception of NXT, they're changing things because they don't know what else to do. Things just aren't working for them, and they're just changing, and there's no rhyme, no reason, there's no dots being connected. At least AEW is trying to have some kind of system where it's starting to make a little bit of sense. For such a young company, I think they're still trying to get their feet under them.
And they have experienced people on their payroll.
They do.
They've got Arn Anderson. They've got Jim Ross. They've got Jake Roberts. They've got all these guys.
Jerry Lynn.
I don't know if Tony. Right. I don't know if Tony Khan ever taps their experience.
Well, you also got to wonder whether some of these new kids will even listen to the guys. I'm sure there are some, but there's a lot of them that won't. And you've got to, Sheldon, you've seen it. Unless we let them do something out there and try it, you won't ever get to know. That's what the indies are all about. That's what the indies are for. This is where everybody hones their craft.
Well, and to piggyback off of something that you said with the lack of experience, so to speak, as far as being on television that AEW has, the amount of trust that they're putting into these guys that haven't had that much experience, right? Now compare that to WWE, that has people like Cesaro, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Daniel Bryan, who aren't allowed to go out and do what they're supposed to, as if they're not trusted to go out there and cut a promo. They're not trusted to go out there and go all out in a match. Why handicap some of the best talent you have in the world, and then push someone because they make me laugh this week? Look at the push that Otis got the first half of last year.
Yeah,
that's right.
Just as Vince just enjoyed what he saw and was like, hey, I think you'll be good. And I definitely think that one of the things that AEW has been falling into a trap of lately is just listening to the fans a bit too much, and trying to please the fans a bit too much. And instead of being like, you do have to please the fans, obviously, eventually at least. But there is that fine balance of basically creating what's going to please the fans and giving the fans what they want right away. And I think AEW is still trying to find that balance of being like, Twitter wants so-and-so to go over, so so-and-so is going to go over. No, make them work for it.
Right. Put that chase and do that work.
And there's too much attention paid to how Dave Meltzer is going to rate the show.
Yeah. Well, Britt Baker even said that in that extra piece that they put out there. She wanted to know, I hope everybody liked it. I hope Meltzer gives me 5 stars. I hope it's why you're not playing to him. You're not out there working for him. He doesn't matter. He's not buying a ticket to watch you. He's walking in the door if he wants to watch you. You know what I mean? You have customers. That's who you're working for.
Dave Meltzer's a friend of mine. I've known Dave Meltzer for about 30 years. And I like Dave very much, but Dave, he's not the be-all and end-all. I'm sorry. No. I mean, he's the wrestling observer. He's not the wrestling booker. He's not the wrestling participant. He's not the wrestling oracle. He's the wrestling observer. He's observing you. It's not the other way around. Why are you observing him? Doesn't make any sense.
And it's hard for me to put too much credibility in what he has to say. Sheldon, you have been in the middle of that ring. You have booked matches. You have been doing this for 20 years. He hasn't. All he's done is been a fan sitting in the background watching and telling you what it is he likes and what he wants to say. And he's been a student of the game, yes. But until you've stepped through those ropes, or until you've sat there and talked to somebody or had to tell somebody what it is they're going to do and been a part of an actual, you've put your money on the line. Until you've done that, what you have to say only gets that far.
Very true. I have a lot of respect for Dave's level of knowledge, but you're right. Go, Kev.
There's no questioning his level of knowledge. No questioning it. But I think these indie kids are getting too caught up in what he thinks. And I want him to say good things about me. Everybody wants somebody to say good things about them. Don't put it all in Dave Meltzer's basket. I'm sorry. It's just... That's just me. And I don't know the man personally. I don't have anything against him. It's just, you've got a core audience of people that are paying to watch you. Those are the people that matter. They're the ones that are going to make you or break you.
Kev, you were going to say?
I was going to say that everyone's an expert promoter, expert booker until it's their dime.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Then all of a sudden it's a completely different story.
Right. Everyone I like to say this all the time, everybody in wrestling is the smartest guy in the room until it's their money on the line.
Yep.
That's a totally different story.
Having been a purse before, I can completely attest to that.
Right.
Yep.
Let me tell you, it ain't easy doing this. It ain't ballet.
No.
It's not for the faint of heart, I can tell you that. We're going to take a look at our bonus feature this week and talk about it on the other side. This is something that took place in 2006. The whole story plays out in the video that you're about to see. Our company was involved in doing what's called a teaser pilot for a reality show on women's wrestling. This was back in 2006. This was many, many years before Total Divas, 12 or 13 years before Total Divas. So let's take a look at this Triple W reality show pilot, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. Okay, so interesting story behind this. As you saw in the video, in 2006, the Boston Globe did a really big article on World Women's Wrestling. And in this particular period of time, if you got an article of that size in a major metropolitan newspaper, that was a big, big deal. Such a big deal that people take notice in lots of different fields. I remember getting lots of, and that piece appeared on a Saturday, which is usually like the worst day of the week to have a feature in a newspaper. It's like the least read newspaper day, Saturday of the week. But I got phone calls and emails from all kinds of people because of this article. And we were contacted by a production company based in Somerville, Massachusetts, called Powder House Productions. And they wanted to do a reality show based on World Women's Wrestling. And they had a contract with, I want to say it was either the Learning Channel or the Oxygen Network, one of the two. I don't remember. It's been a long time, and I'm getting old and feeble, so... You know, my memory often fails me. I often have little lapses like this. But anyway, so they contacted us, and they wanted to come and shoot some footage of the show and put together this little teaser so that one of the networks that they were dealing with would commission an actual pilot or greenlight eventually a series. So we went along with this on a handshake, and it was one of those things where the people involved knew absolutely zero about wrestling. And I do mean zero. It's like they had landed from another planet and had never seen professional wrestling before. They didn't know the rules. They didn't know how matches were won. They didn't know anything. Nothing. But they had to shoot this, and they had to shoot it in a hurry. So they came to our next Triple W show, and they shot the footage that you saw in this teaser pilot. And I remember pleading with them to just come and watch the show and then come back the next month and actually shoot it, because they'd be coming back knowing who was who would be the best person to feature, etc., and not be just shooting it blind. But they shot it blind. We had an incident with the cameraman where he was in the back shooting the girls getting dressed. A big no-no. Big no-no. They were very stern words exchanged between myself and this individual with the camera, and I basically threatened to insert his camera in a place where it wouldn't normally go. Anyway.
Back seat of a Volkswagen?
Back seat, yes. Volkswagen, no. But anyway. So it was a little bit contentious, but they did this, and the network decided that they weren't interested in it. But it was an interesting experience. And again, this was something like 12 years before Total Divas, and here we are, and you see us on the radar of a national company. So what did you think about this?
No, I thought it was really interesting. One of the things that really resonated with me was discussing their normal lives versus their wrestling lives. Mm-hmm. And that's something that because I'm a state employee during the week, and then I turn around and I beat people up all weekend, which is very cathartic, might I add.
It'd be a little bit more cathartic if you could beat up some of those other state employees, but that's probably another story.
Listen, they're all standing around doing nothing too, so.
Right.
So that juxtaposition of being, an office worker by day and then turning around and by night being a superstar. I was just complaining because I just had my first wrestling match back last Sunday, in exactly a year from the last time I had my last wrestling match. It was a year to the day. I went into work on Monday morning, and I worked from home on Monday morning because thank you, COVID. That crash that I get after returning to reality basically just hit me, and I was like, oh, I don't miss this at all. Like, I go from being a superstar to a super secretary. So that really resonated with me, but I just thought the whole aspect of show, and the other thing that really, it made me laugh was, I think it was Nikki Rocks saying, it hurts. And that made me laugh because it does. It hurts. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's not real. It's fake. I'm like, no, it's not. I'm really getting punched in the head. I'm getting punched in a place where it's not going to kill me, but I'm still getting punched.
Joe, I don't think you were around for this. You came in maybe about a year or so later.
I did. I came in about a year or so later. It's funny, though, because one of the producers that was involved with this was married to a member of my family at the time that this was going on. So wow. I was aware of this before I ever came on board with NECW. She's no longer with my family, or maybe even with Powerhouse at this point, but yeah, I was aware of this and was asked 1,000 questions about how wrestling works, and because she had no idea what it was all about, and I still tried to kayfabe it as I was going because she had no idea, and right. I was like, why are you doing this show? Because like you said, no one had ever done a reality show that was gonna pull the curtain back. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. You're not going to be able to do that, And then, of course, we see what we just saw, and they were attempting to do just that.
Right.
And talking about far beyond your years, for Divas to come out and all, and Ms. and Mrs., and now we got Cody and
Brandy.
Brandy going to have their own show coming. I mean, it's, and the Bellas, and, it's amazing. And I'll tell you what, that actually appeals to a broader audience, because even if you're not a wrestling fan, it's as well as anybody else, the stuff that happens backstage is usually better drama than what's happening in the ring anyway.
This is true.
Yeah.
It's definitely more compelling. Yeah, it was interesting. I liked how it was put together. I thought it was, seeing how it all came out, it could have really been something that would have brought a lot more eyes to the product, that's for sure. But look, so why didn't it happen, Sheldon? What ended up, was it them or was it you that finally said, no, we don't want to do this?
No, it was them. They tried to pitch it to a network, and when the network said we're not interested, that was the end of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they had a relationship with one of these networks. They had done some programming for them. They saw this article in the paper and they said, "Oh wow, what a great idea for a show!" And they pitched it and they shot this little teaser to get them interested, and they passed on it. So
they were affiliated with the Learning Channel at the time.
Yes.
That is.
Kevin, what did you think when you saw this? Kev?
I think we lost him, man.
Wow,
well, we lost him. For a minute, I just thought he fell asleep.
Yeah, nope. Looks like he's frozen.
It's past my bedtime too. I see the yawning going on there. I get it. So, Dave, they knew zero about wrestling, and they were dicks about shooting it, and they thought they could push everybody around. That wasn't happening. That was just not happening.
No.
And I mean,
that's always a challenge, bringing outsiders in.
Right.
To, especially even to the point where there was one time I was at an NCW show, and there was a guy that kept, because we would change out in the truck and everything, because it was, VFW hall, and there was a member of the VFW that kept coming around and watching us change, and like I ended up flipping out on him, like screaming at him, because he kept coming back, and then he started filming people changing, especially women, and I was like, what the are you doing?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I was livid, and I don't think I've ever been. Actually, Castro, you might remember that. Do you remember the NCW show where the guy was filming people changing in the back, and I flipped out on him?
Was this outside?
Yeah, this was at Dedham.
Yes.
Yeah, and I ended up screaming at him and stuff like, "You need to stop. You need to turn around and walk away right now." So, like, I can only imagine how pissed you were that they're trying to film, like, these official photographers are trying to film girls changing in the locker room. Like, forget that. I would have lost my mind. I would have suplexed him.
Right. Well, some of the girls were really indignant, which they had every right to be, but Nikki Roxx in particular, and they wanted to make her the star of the whole thing, and she just, wasn't having it.
Yeah.
On the one hand, she's justified. On the other hand, you let me deal with that. You let me talk tough to him. That's what I'm there for. So.
Yeah.
Kevin, what did you think about this? I didn't get your.
From the beginning, seeing Della Morte, who I have not seen in a very long time.
Nah.
She is perfect for television. I'm sorry. If I saw that commercial, the way she was describing everything, I would have been hooked. Legitimately, if I saw that, I would have watched that show. I would have been curious to see what direction it would have taken, if it was going to be just strictly in the ring or at events, or if it was going to want to follow these people home and, see their day-to-day lives. Hopefully it would have stayed away from the quote-unquote reality of Total Divas or something along those lines. Like the, hey, let's put them in this situation and see what happens. I think that the world should see more things like that. Like you get to see what makes a lot of the people who get involved in this insane world of wrestling. Like, what drives you in? What makes you tick? Why do you want to put yourself through this? And I think it would be great too to see, like, I
don't take any bumps, and I ask myself that question all the time. I'm going to put myself through this.
But I would love for someone to be able to capture the concept of, okay, where do I want to book this match? What story do I want them to tell? Have them plan the match to tell that story and have everything go off perfectly and have that adrenaline rush and that ultimate, like, euphoric satisfaction of job well done. And at the same time, I think they need to see what goes in behind, the planning for the match. What story do I want to tell? They go out there and it gets completely botched so they can see that ultimate devastation of... Because there's so many stories that never got to play out for one reason or the other that I wish people could have at least heard where, something was supposed to end. And that's a show that I would watch.
You know what I thought would have made a great television show? And I actually wanted to pitch this to somebody at one time, is to do a pro wrestling version of, like, Bar Rescue, where we get Paul Heyman comes to an independent company and tries to fix it. Somebody like a Paul or a Jim Cornette or somebody like that, and you see him, like, reaming out the wrestlers who do a lousy job, or reaming out the booking because it's all convoluted or whatever. I just thought that would have been a hell of a
That'd be
video
huge.
series.
But you know what would
Yeah.
happen, though? You would pitch the show, they would take it, and it would be Vince Russo is going to these places. And
That's right, yeah. You'd shoot for Paul Heyman and Jim Cornette, and you'd end up with Vince Russo. Whatever, right. God.
no offense, bro.
Right.
Let's take him, bro.
We have a listener question, do we not? Kevin is in charge of the listener questions.
I'm still waiting for an opening catchphrase, so please don't be shy. All right. Hello, I am sending this email to ask what became of the female wrestler Casey Ray. I watched her wrestle against Mistress Belmont, and I thought she was a wrestler that could really go far. I was also wondering about what became of the Giant Pharaoh. He was another wrestler that I figured would go very far. I listen to your podcast every week, mostly on YouTube, and I love it. Hey, thanks. Thank you guys for keeping the interesting conversation going. It is appreciated. Finally, what will it take for live wrestling events to start back up now that the vaccine is out there? I want to see NECW wrestling event in the worst way. God bless, guys. Stay healthy. Rob Scan. Thanks, Rob.
Right on, Rob.
Thank you so much for your questions. Let me rattle them off. Casey Ray retired from wrestling a number of years ago. I don't know what the motivation was for her retirement, but she just lost interest, or maybe there were injuries involved. I really don't know. But she is no longer involved in pro wrestling. She could have been a really good talent, but, things happen in life sometimes, and some people just, she's no Isana, what can I say? So, but then again,
I'll be doing this in my walker, sitting there getting out to the ring. Come here, give me 5 seconds. Yep. 5 minutes later, I finally get in the ring.
Giant Pharaoh is still around. Nobody's been doing much of anything other than if they're on national television and taping shows someplace. But you'll probably see him again in NECW at some point, assuming that he's in good health and is willing to get back between the ropes. I do hear from him from time to time, and he's doing well. Just like the rest of us, we're waiting for this whole COVID situation to pass. And as far as what it would take to get NECW back in action, really it's the Commonwealth of Massachusetts allowing events of our kind to take place. But the other side of it is more of an economic one, which is it doesn't make any sense to do things with limited audience. When you're running buildings that are 300 seats, 500 seats, whatever, to run at 12% capacity just wouldn't make any sense.
Unless the tickets were $300 each.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
right.
We don't want to soak people. That's one thing about my philosophy of promoting wrestling. I don't want it to be inaffordable for people. Not that I think people would pay $300 to see us, and that's no knock on us, but I just don't think that's a reasonable thing to expect, especially in a pandemic where a lot of people may be having financial trouble or whatever. So, we want to be back in a situation where it makes sense all around, where it makes sense for people's health and well-being, where it makes sense economically for us to do it, and when the Commonwealth allows it again. So, sooner or later it's going to happen, and I appreciate your interest, and just be patient, because I promise you we will be back. So.
I don't know about you, but I think people would pay $300 to see me wrestle. Just saying.
Right on, absolutely.
I kid, but
Yeah, sure, why not?
let's try
Now,
it.
watch, now next time she comes in, she's going to be looking for $300. Why not? Oh, well. Anyway.
I only sold one ticket, but it was worth $300, so let's do
There you go.
this.
Well, if we find that one guy that's willing to pay $300, I'll throw in a free hoodie.
All right.
There you go.
Get that hoodie.
Isana, I want to thank you for being on with us. You've been a delight to have on, and we would like to have you back again.
I would love to be back. This was really fun.
You have brightened the proceedings considerably. Let me just ask you a couple of quick things before we wrap it up and call it a night here. Your favorite match that you've participated in?
There's two that are tied. My favorite matches would be my first match against Davey Ann because Davienne is just such an incredible wrestler, and every time I get in the ring with her, I learn something new, and I just become way better. And then my other favorite match would be a Falls Count Anywhere match that I had at House of Bricks with Amanda Fox. We fenced with pool noodles. I double stomped her on the parallel bars. I suplexed her underneath the uneven bars, and there was a dive spot done off a 12-foot ladder into the ring, which was incredible. So that was a really, really fun match, and the pool noodles was probably my favorite part because that was completely unexpected. She grabbed a pool noodle, started hitting me with it. I grabbed a pool noodle, and next thing you know, we're fencing with pool noodles in the middle of a match, and it was hilarious, and everyone loved it.
Beats light tubes and thumbtacks, I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah, no.
There you go.
That's my kind of hardcore right there.
There you go. Where can people
find
you?
The hula hoops hurt though. The hula hoops you whacked me with really hurt.
Where can people find you on social media?
On social media, I am Isana Baby, at Isana Baby on Twitter, and Isana_baby on Instagram. And then for some reason, I decided to go with a last name for a while when I created my Facebook, so that's Isana Alron, which I can never spell without thinking it out, so I'll let you figure it out. It's spelled like it sounds. Alron. Or you can just search for Isana and it should pop up. So that's that on Facebook. And that's really the only social media I use. My Twitter is probably the best way to get a hold of me lately. I've been trying to be more active on Twitter and do more outreach and just, something every day on Twitter. So that's probably your best bet.
All right. Well, we look forward to having you back with us, and thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Well, it's fun to have you. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. For Joe Matarazzo, Kevin Castro, and the Suplex Sweetheart, Isana, Sheldon Goldberg, thanks again for listening. We'll see you next week.
The Regeneration Podcast is a production of New England Championship Wrestling. To send us questions, comments, or feedback, email us at regenerationnecw@gmail.com.